What's up, Nubians? Welcome to Techn00bians, part of the Geekish Network. Techn00bians is your weekly live stream and podcast hosted by Black technology professionals steeped in the blackest blacks. We're here to discuss the what, when, and how you can get into this world of technology, specifically video games. With me today, I have our producer who never holds a grudge, Shanae.
Hey, folks.
I've got he keeps us out of the sunken place. It's our artist extraordinaire, Ryan.
What's up, y'all?
I've got the one who makes it all look like child's play, Chuck. And my goodness, Travis. And mirror on the wall. Mirror on the wall. Who's the scariest of us all? It is Travis. Apparently, Travis is also like going to be missing everything today.
Knew it. I should have worn my Darth Vader helmet, man. It's sitting right here. I should have worn it.
How you breathing this?
How do you don't? And I am your ghostess with the mostest. I am Cherie. We are here at Techn00bians. We are here to inspire, sustain, and nurture successful creative technologists in the pursuit of Black excellence and content development. All right. Threw me off there, Trav. End the show. Oh my gosh. That was excellent.
Well, look, I know it's Halloween, and there's nothing scarier to some audiences than a black stormtrooper. So
That's
I needed to kick it off.
That is the scariest thing, sir.
Terrifying the masses here.
Oh, wow.
Yes, obviously, we are celebrating Halloween is tomorrow. So in honor of Halloween, we've got a scary show for you all today. This week, we are talking about designing horror. Are you afraid of the dark? That's what our topic is for today. But before we get into that, we're going to talk some tech and gaming news with our news segment, Techn00bians. All right, Travis, because you had that entrance today, you're going to kick us off with the news segment. What do you got for us?
So coming straight from GameDeveloper.com, in wake of Epic versus Apple ruling, Xala launches web shop for mobile games. So I'm going to cut right to the chase. Basically, they're creating another store, another way that you can actually, buy digital items, but you're still on another platform. And I'm pretty sure this is where all the fun begins now. It is going to be interesting to see how this develops. And the reason why I say that is because really all we're talking about now is, some servers, really, right? And how reliable they are and whether or not they're going to survive under the massive strain of basically, everyone who has gone from, I guess this occupied like jail to, freedom. And we're going to see just how much digital items really cost, right? It's going to be interesting to see now. I just want to, there's a certain amount of me that's feeding on this chaos and going, let's do it. Let's do it.
No, I mean, we've been talking about this ever since the whole Epic lawsuit became a thing, right? This is the first of many, as Travis said. We're probably going to see a lot more really interesting and creative solutions that folks come up with, not only for creating these stores, but advertising these stores and for pushing users towards these stores. So, expect there to be a lot of interesting developments that are taking place, especially in that mobile space, right? Mobile PC space right now. I'm here for it.
All of it.
I also sort of like how Travis mentioned, like, they're free. And in my brain, I'm like, oh, have they been emancipated, Travis?
We're going to find out. we're gonna find out. I mean, serious business. I mean, this is seismic. It really is, because we've never had to come face to face with just how much digital items are really worth outside of a few selected people telling us how much they're worth, right? And so when you have alternatives and you start having pricing wars, and then you start having, incentives to keep customers in your ecosystem, now it's just going to be coming from everywhere. And I may God have mercy on, the store people at Apple right now, right? Because I know none of them are sleeping.
Oh, yeah. I don't have anything to add to that. Yes.
Yep.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah. It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. Yeah, it's gonna happen. And I'm telling you right now, the stopgap or what it's gonna boil down to is the customers are gonna look back at Apple and say, "What have you done for us lately?" Okay. And then Apple is going to have to respond, and Apple cannot respond with this mailed fist of the emperor type tactic. They're going to have to romance people now in a way that they never did before. And I think that's good business. Please believe.
Yeah. It's pretty brilliant. And I think also the other thing I'll mention is, I mean, I'm sure, like you said, like I all said, like Apple is probably like, lying awake at night trying to figure out what to do here. But I'm hoping this does breed more innovation, I mean, it's
because think about this for a second, okay? And this is real. Like, I think about past shopping experiences that I've had in real life, right? I don't know about y'all, but everybody's probably, everyone I know has been to like Burlington Coat Factory, for example, and stumbled across something you thought you shouldn't be there, and you're like, oh, snap, here's this name brand, is dope, and it's way lower price, right? Now we're going to be living in a society basically where your Gucci items, you can buy a 7-Eleven.
And I don't necessarily think that's a bad world to live in.
I don't either. But what I'm saying is that this is an economy that hasn't really been vetted or tested yet.
It's true.
Right. And so it is going to be absolute chaos. Because I'm going to 7-Eleven.
You made the comments earlier about the how Apple Store employees are probably laying awake at night. Who else is laying awake at night? They're lawyers.
Oh yeah.
Because one of the things we have to be cognizant of and clear of is this is far from over.
Oh yes. Oh, yes.
This is still going through the court system. We're going to see appeals from both sides. But in the interim, while that's still shaking out, we're going to see some more stores open up.
You better go to.
They're going to be taking.
You better go to Circle K and get your Lambo.
Get it now.
Hurry. Mm-hmm. So, okay, awesome. No, that's great. So, okay, I have a story for everybody here. And this is interesting. So is anyone like familiar with like the Skyrim in real life series? Mm-hmm. You'll see these series of videos where basically like, it's a guy and like maybe a lady or two or something like that. And they go around and like, basically there's like recreating kind of like the aesthetic of Skyrim, particularly like the bugs that you see and other little like kind of silly things. It was a very popular series.
It's like people like the NPCs just walking into doors.
Yeah, walking the wall, the way they walk, like the stilted way they walk, and all sorts. It's actually an entertaining like series of videos. Well, there's some crazy news that's come out of this because the TikTok influencer who did that series of videos. His name is, Ali Nassar Abulaban. He's that popular as a social media personality. He has actually now been accused of murdering his wife and a friend. And this is crazy. Like basically, and the reason why I'm mentioning this is kind of a tech story. I mean, obviously, there's a Skyrim angle, stuff like that related to it. But the way that they're saying that, that he, I guess, or he used technology, I'll say like that, to kind of like spy on his wife and their friend. He reportedly installed like some kind of listening app on his daughter's iPad. And supposedly he heard like, his wife and friend like talking and laughing and stuff like that. And like I said, this is all legend or whatever right now, but it is according to, multiple media reports. And then he ended up coming back to their apartment and, and shooting both of them. So the reason I mention this is because this brings up, puts additional focus on like stalkerware, right? We talked about this before where it's just like technology, when you create technology, you also have to think about how that technology can be abused, right? Yeah. So when Apple talked about their AirTags and everyone was talking about, oh, this is fabulous and this is great and stuff like that. And then they said, well, you also have to think about how this can be abused, how somebody who's an abusive relationship, somebody can use the AirTags to try and track somebody, and stuff like that. So Apple's had to try and respond to try and make it so that there's, put some randomization in like their system and the pings and stuff like that. In this case, this wasn't allegedly Abulaban installing stalkerware on his wife's devices. It was he installed on his daughter's devices, and particularly because we have parental controls and stuff like that. Oftentimes, parents can put stuff on their kids' devices, and there's nothing that's really going to stop it, right? Because the parent owns that, has control over it. Yeah. So, I said this is it's a really tragic case, but it puts a lot of focus though on like making sure that developers really keep, we really have to consider how your apps can be used for, not only for like your intended purpose, but like, things like this.
Yeah. I mean, this kind of, the category you call it was stalkerware, and that's sort of the category that this is sort of known as. It's oftentimes, I mean, a lot of this comes through on Android devices where you can sideload stuff. Apple tries to make sure that this kind of stuff doesn't get on their store, but there's a question about whether or not this was a legitimate app or not, because it was apparently on an iOS device. And this sort of, in instances in the past where like stalkerware has wound up on an iOS device, it's usually marketed as like, surveillance software to like protect your children. Yeah. It's often marketed to parents and stuff like, oh, you want to make sure your kids are safe. So you install this thing on their device, and so you can make sure they're safe, or so you can like, see what your
wife. Right?
Yeah. So this is a thing that's all throughout our, it's one. I feel like it's one of the themes that we return to over and over again, is talking about as new technology becomes available, how do we as creators of technology, how do we as people on the forefront, like really make sure that we are protecting the most vulnerable people and not just going after that dollar, Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's very. And this sort of goes.
Well, that's the conundrum, right? When you're in any sort of research and development, right? When, for example, they discovered erectile dysfunction medicine by treating other things, and this was the side effect, right? And so, like, oh, look, we can do this too, right? And so all of a sudden, that became the business. This is, I think, it's inherent when you make tools. This used to be all fun and games back when we weren't so interconnected. and now we are. We're inexorably connected in ways that we never have before. And in order to enjoy that amount of, in order to enjoy that, it comes part and parcel with being in peril all at the same time. And I don't know whether or not there's ever a fix, as much as people just have to be committed to being vigilant. You just really do. This is a very sad story. You just, but what you don't want to do is make a whole nation take off their shoes basically to get on a plane because of something like this. Right. And I think that's, and so we have to watch ourselves, right. And not overreact.
No, I agree. There's definitely, there's definitely a bit of like security theater that that folks sort of use to respond to this, to give the appearance of safety without actually solving the problem. This is to bring it back to software development and tech. One of the things I often talk about, and we'll talk about probably in a little bit when we talk about the long topic around design, is, I talk with my designers when we have problems to solve and they want to come up with solutions. And I'm like, cool, what problem are we trying to solve? And they're like, oh, but we could do this and we could do that. We could do this other thing. I'm like, but what problem are we trying to solve? Like, so we're trying to make sure that people are specifically identifying that problem and creating solutions, designing solutions that solve that and aren't just security theater as well. One of the other themes that we do often return to a lot, and Travis brought us back to it a second ago, was that we're in a connected society. We are so connected right now, right? Like, we have never had more access to each other. And that also brings like another, brings to the forefront, like the other sort of question of like, what do companies owe to the society that they make products for, right? Because like back in the 70s and 80s, back in the pre-internet days, right, before the internet was a thing that was on my little smart device, you could make the argument that we're designing this for the majority, and we don't know what hurts the minority of people. We just don't have access to that. You can't say that anymore, right? Like, you've got access to all of that information, and for as many negatives as there are to the internet and the social media like Twitter and stuff like that too. Like, it's actually been a really positive thing for a lot of folks from like marginalized communities to be able to actually get their voice out there and say, hey, this hurts me, this hurts us, kind of thing, right? So companies do really need to respond to that. And it's going to be really interesting to see what the next steps are on this in particular, especially because I think that this has probably put a bit of more of a spotlight on stalkerware and, people really understanding how it's used and abused.
Yeah. And particularly for this case where, like you said, Chuck, there are apps that market themselves that way, but they haven't revealed what the exact app was. They've just kind of described it. But for this, they said it was supposed to be something, that he installed on his daughter's device and was meant to monitor children and stuff like that. So theoretically, you assume that this particular company, they shouldn't want their app to be used in this way. So I really do hope that they do kind of take a look at this and start to, not just them, but other companies who are not marketing their stuff as stalkerware, do consider those implications because, things like this can happen, right? Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Or even if you're just paranoid about it.
Yeah. That's a way bigger conversation. How do we deprogram people's brains about what they expect from each other? Yeah.
How do we solve toxic masculinity? Yeah. Well, we're gonna jump onto
I'm gonna stay away from that one.
We have smaller problems. Somehow stalkerware is the smaller problem here within our culture. We're gonna jump onto another topic here. Ryan, you've got a story for us.
Yeah, so I like talking about money. Lately, I've been really liking to talk about money. So here's something. I don't know if I'm not even sure if it's good, but I guess we'll explore it and see if it's good or not. But basically, Patreon, which is a forum for a lot of creative people and artists, they actually confirmed that they're exploring crypto as a way for creators to make money. Last month, they floated out the idea of creator coins to its community, and Creator Coins is a kind of crypto base for your social currency. So I've been exploring not Patreon. I've been exploring crypto money for the past 2 months now. I've been doing a lot of research, and it seems like there's a huge advertising side to this. It's not just create this art, put it up, and then it sells. You have to have a huge promotional campaign and everything behind that. So I'm assuming Patreon is trying to get into that, and they're probably going to handle that side of things. Honestly, I was assuming that, but then after reading the article a little bit more, I saw that was one of their things that they were sort of thinking about doing, was like they were exploring that side of things. So there's nothing confirmed or anything, but if they do, that means they're going to have to take up a huge portion of advertising because it's in their interest to get this thing sold. Yeah. And then on top of that, how many thousands of artists that's on Patreon right now if they jump in on this, the amount of money they will be making, and then the amount of money that's going to be distributed throughout the thing. It's a lot of issues I could see that's going to come out of it. So that's probably why they're pausing on actually doing this. They haven't gone, fully into this yet.
Yeah.
But it is something that's out there. It is something that I'm very curious about.
Yeah.
And honestly, to be real, artists don't need Patreon to do this. They can literally do this somewhere else. They don't need to go through Patreon. So I'm wondering what would Patreon's percentage be on all of this. And also there's also a resale market. So you have to factor that in there. So it just seems like it's a lot of numbers and a lot of issues that would come out of this.
Yeah.
Lawsuits and stuff like that, and contracts. People have to sign like extended contracts or anything like that. If they even jump into that, it just seems like it's a huge issue. But I'm just letting you guys know it's out there. It's in the article. There's artists out there who's going to see it, and they're probably going to have questions, and they're probably going to have ideas. Oh, maybe I could just scribble some sticks togetere and throw it up there, and make a couple $100,000.
I see that all over Twitter right now. Actually,
there's some pretty scribble stuff that's not like people just scribble whatever, and then they're making a ton of money off of it.
There is. I think this is really interesting. I mean, like crypto and like NFTs and all this stuff, this is not going away, right? And it's very firmly like the art world has very much adopted it, and it's here to stay. I just read a story earlier this week it was just talking about other social media that's kind of like, they're starting to allow like tip functionality and stuff like that for artists or creators and stuff like that. I think it was Twitter that was now letting they've rolled it out for tips and stuff like that. You obviously have to have like a certain number of followers and like, an account in good standing or whatever. I think it was Twitter that was now allowing people to tip Bitcoin, to creators and stuff like that. So, I mean, this is definitely something that, I said that is out there. And as you said, Ryan, I mean, you've been investigating it. Like I've heard like, several, clubhouse rooms and stuff like that, where artists are talking about like, how do you create NFTs? How do you start building a business?
So NFTs are like 50% of Clubhouse right now. By the way.
Here's what as I listen to Ryan talk about this, and I listen to, people talk about crypto, you know what? I feel like my life is becoming a mobile game. And we think it's funny, but you heard it here first, or maybe I heard it here first because I said it. I believe that we're going to get to a point where there is honest to God sort of metaverse money and real money, or sort of the old sort of money, right? And so just like you have in-game currency in your mobile game, okay, and then you have real money, or real sort of economies or whatever. And I really think that it's going to get to a point where you're paying people in crypto so that they can get items and services and so on and so forth in crypto. And as long as, because currency is just an agreement, right? And so if you get enough people to agree, then your doodads have worth.
I think that that's very possible. And then approximately 15 minutes later, the entire earth will just light on fire.
It's actually here. It's actually here already. I hate to drop a bomb on you guys, but it's here already. It's just that there's not a lot of people have jumped on that ship yet. So it's still early in the game. Yeah. I had a meeting with some people about 5 months ago about this, and they were talking about the wave of how this thing has been hitting the community and how things are changing over. Tom Bilyeu is a friend of mine, and he has a massive multimedia company, and he's been releasing videos about this, how things have been changing into the digital age, how from money to art, how art has been transitioning into that stage, and it's either we jump on board and we ride this here, or we sit back in the dinosaur age and we just look at the rest of the world go by. It's literally at our doorstep right now, and there are people who just still don't get it. They don't understand.
If I can jump in here for a second, I think there's more than two options. Number one, but number two, there's been a lot of adoption about this in the art space. But I would also say that it's not like the art community is not fully aligned on this or anything. Like, so like one of the most common conversations I'm seeing, like, as like, you know, you saw Patreon starting to adopt this. Adobe just started talking about this about last week or something like that as well, integrating like the ability to mint NFTs into their products. There's been a really big backlash as well, because there's a lot of artists who are not on board with the idea of NFTs. Nope. And they don't like for a variety of reasons, all the reasons you guys have probably heard before as well, like the environmental concerns, the environmental, exactly. That's the false scarcity that NFTs and introduced into digital items. Like there's the fact that it does open up the space to a lot of what was the word, fraud and stuff like that too, because like you just mint whatever you want, and there's no system of checks and stuff like that too. So it is definitely a space that is very, very the opposite of mature. It is sort of a buyer beware and a minter beware sort of space as well. There's also I've also seen a term recently that I don't really understand, and it's called clean NFTs, which gives me a clean coal sort of feeling to it. But yeah, there is a lot of space still. This is far from a settled issue, even in the art community and stuff like that as well. So I do encourage folks to keep an eye on it and stuff, but don't necessarily feel like you're forced to go one way or another.
I will mention McDonald's just released their first NFT earlier this week of the McRib. It's a drawing of the McRib. So we're already in the end times, and just in case anyone was curious.
T-minus 15 minutes to the extinction of the earth.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
My mom.
But what happened is we all agreed.
We did all agree.
We all agreed, right?
Exactly.
And that's the thing. I mean, the dollar doesn't mean anything. We just agree that it does. Right?
This is true.
And so, yeah. So, I mean,
it doesn't inherently have value.
So that's why I'm looking at what Ryan's saying, and I'm saying he's not too far off. I mean, it really, you just have, your boy give a couple more of those seminars, and enough people to agree.
And I'll take a photo of it and I'll make it to an NFT, and then I totally agree. Like, I mean, like this does not, I said, it's not going anywhere. I mean, like I said, all these big companies are jumping in on this. It's not going anywhere. I just want to see when the government actually put some proper regulation and stuff around it. But that's probably going to be a while anyways as well, because we know the speed of government, at least the U.S. government, for real. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm. There are absolutely valuable ways to think about this, but yeah. But if you hang out on Twitter right now, there ain't mortgage deeds being minted right now. It's like a monkey holding a sandwich. So
You know what I recently saw? I recently saw.
and I would rather the earth catch on fire because we're minting mortgage deeds as opposed to monkeys holding sandwiches.
All right. So
but one shouldn't exist.
I was shocked.
We gotta move on. We gotta move on.
It depends on what that monkey and that sandwich look like.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have questions about that.
That was duct taped to the wall. Yeah. See, I mean, the duct tape. That's what was worth the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
And the person who walked by and took it off the wall and ate it was also worth the hundreds of thousands.
Yeah.
There's a lot of questions about this too, and I like that it is a space that is very well.
Yeah, it is. It really, truly is. I mean,
Oh yeah.
yeah. Or this was worth nothing until the artist dies, and now it's worth millions and millions.
Or this is worth millions of dollars to me because I took it and minted it without the artist knowing it, and too bad artists because this is not regulated.
All right, we're gonna move on to our last story here, folks. Shanae, I think you've got this for us.
I have the best story, y'all.
Talking about art.
Has nothing to do with NFTs, but it does have to do with Pikmin. And I'm a big fan of Pikmin. I'm a big fan of most Nintendo things, but Pikmin is like the most adorable thing in the world. And if you did not hear, Niantic just announced their new game, which is Pikmin Bloom, which is a new AR game. They of course partnered with Nintendo because it's Nintendo's property and stuff. And it's in the Pokemon Go sort of vein where you're they're trying to get you up and active and out of your house and walking around. And as you walk, Pikmin accrue behind you and little flowers start blooming and what else do you need in life? I don't know.
I couldn't be less interested.
Listen, here's the thing, right? Because Pokemon Go, when it first got announced, people were like, "What is that? I'm catching Pokemon? I don't know. Maybe we can make work." And then $1 billion later, it's like, "Oh, that seems like that was a good idea." For Pikmin Bloom, by the way, just came out. It's actually out in the U.S. as of last Thursday. Yes, you can find it. I actually just searched for it. I'm going to be downloading it on my phone soon.
Let me just start.
It's also out in Singapore and Australia, and they think they're going to be rolling it out probably worldwide the next few days, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a soft launch, right? But yeah, I'm excited about it. They haven't told all the details. I'm sure there's probably some other gameplay related thing in there, but that might be related to the Pikmin brand. If you guys are familiar with it, it's a strategy game. But I mean, I just want to walk around and collect Pikmin. I just want to.
Aren't they plants?
They're part plant, part animal.
So basically, go outside and discover outside.
I mean, yeah, that's also.
No, I'm good.
Touch grass is basically that's what the logo.
Look, it's grass.
Slogan's gonna be touch grass, please. Maybe it's not for you.
That's called weed.
I'm gonna mention this. So I every single time Nintendo has a direct, I'm like, where's my new Pikmin? I want my new Pikmin game. I loved Pikmin 3.
Yes.
It was so that was one of my favorite games. And then my sister and I we did co-op on all the little extra boards and stuff like that. I'm a big Pikmin fan.
Love it.
And but I know Nintendo they have their sequels 7 years apart. so
entire consoles come and go.
Yeah, so I'm generally okay, when's Pikmin 4 coming out? Probably 2027 or whatever.
The Switch 3.
I mean, was this the Pikmin game I wanted? No, not necessarily. But if Nintendo is known for anything, it's for giving you kind of what you asked for, but not at all what you asked for.
So
I
basically,
mean,
you wanted the grass inside your home. Is that it?
This is not an
you
inside.
just
No,
wanted.
this is not an inside your home game. It's like Pokemon Go.
you don't know. You got
I know that. That's what I said. That's what I said. She said this isn't the Pikmin game she wanted. I said, what, you want the grass inside your house then?
That's what I wanted. That's exactly what I wanted. It was grass inside my house.
I wanted the strategy game that introduces even more Pikmin besides like the rock Pikmin and the fairy Pikmin and the water Pikmin and the electric Pikmin and the regular red ones.
I feel my soul shrinking. Like,
have you even played Pikmin though, Travis?
no.
God, it's
like I said, it's a game about grass. Like, get out of here! Like,
the original game was not about grass.
Like I could not. I said it. I said what I said. I couldn't be less interested.
Not for you. That's totally fine. It's totally fine. Not everything's for everyone, but this is for me. So excited about a game. Yes. I have like one of those little. There's like the monsters they fight in the Pikmin universe. Is like this big. I don't even know what it looks like. It's like a giant mouth, and it's really cute. It's giant mouth with two tiny little legs. And
this is not turning out well.
And I have a plushie around here somewhere. And he eats the Pikmin, and I have a plushie around here somewhere. I'm wondering if they're gonna have him in the game too.
Oh, he probably will. He'll be in there, and he will eat all of your Pikmin. That's exactly.
The big thing is probably a horse.
Yeah, it is definitely. It's a horse. Yes, that's what it is.
I think it's called like a blue orb or something like that.
Right. Well, I guess for Travis, Pikmin is his horror game. So this is a good segue into our long topic here, folks. We want to talk about designing horror, right? We want to talk about, as we have subtitled it, "Are You Afraid of the Dark?" So we have a lot of folks here who, we've all worked on some sort of a title and been involved in helping to design games within the horror genre. I mean, depending on how you define like the different kind of types of horror. So we wanted to talk a little bit about that, and how you go about creating a horror experience, right? Because like it could be, depending on what kind of experience you want to create, it doesn't necessarily have to be frightening. It could be creepy. It could be a million different things. So yeah. So hey, Chuck, why don't you start us off a little bit? Tell us a little bit about some of the experiences that you've worked on here. It was so good, though. Mm. Yeah. And you're constantly running out of ammo. I will say Resident Evil does do a good job of like, we're talking about creeping you out, like creating the ambiance. They do a great job with that.
Yeah, the whole
Yeah. Can I mention, by the way, for a second, and I want to like get everyone else into this as well. But like when you mentioned Eternal Darkness, like Eternal Darkness was such a great game because it was so like the thing that I thought was fabulous about it was that it didn't just like keep your horror experience just like in the screen. It was like it tried to mess with the player. Like if folks who haven't played Eternal Darkness, you would be playing the game and then suddenly you would see a volume slider just show up on your TV screen and start going up, and the volume would go up and move down. And you're like, am I sitting on the remote or whatever? Nope, it's the game messing with you. It's
my favorite. Like, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Flash, and then it would just like be like, you'd hear like a laugh, and you like your person would start like going insane or whatever, right? And the other one was I was going to mention was like the rolling G logo, where you're playing the game and suddenly the screen flashes and cuts back to like the rolling G logo, like this one GameCube, like the intro, like basically when you boot up your system, it would just have that logo, and you're like, why did my game just restart? Nope, it's just playing with you. How many standards did that game break? How many? I know.
Those are called waivers, my friend. So that was my favorite one. They also do one where occasionally when you would hit this is all based on your insanity meter for your game, which you had to manage. If you didn't manage it, you got to see all the cool stuff. But the one of the other ones they would do is like you go to your pause screen, sometimes your inventory would just be completely empty, which is a bug that I'm sure everyone has experienced in some game somewhere. And they're like, yeah, this is a feature. And I really appreciate that. Yeah. I don't know if I go that far. Because there were Pikmin games on the GameCube too, just so you know. It was good stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, Senua's Sacrifice. Hellblade. And Hellblade. It's Hellblade.
Mm.
Mm.
I want to meet him. I want to meet him.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
Wow.
Well, let me ask you, Travis. Like, what do you think makes a good horror game? You've worked on a few titles here.
That's a lot.
Or one, maybe one.
So games are empowering.
Mm-hmm.
You usually play games to be empowered. Horror is the polar opposite of that. It is, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And everyone likes to feel safe. And you can root that safety in a lot of different things. But what happens when it's very vicarious and your experience lets you know that? Like, I just listened to you talk about Eternal Darkness, and that was the thing. You never knew what your reality was, right? Yeah. And so I think we as people cling to safety. Right? Things cling to safety. I mean, I have a dog, and when he gets scared, he runs right to me and hides behind me, so it's a very primal thing. And I have learned that it is a very powerful thing, but you should treat it with care. Because your most powerful, horror sometimes is very personal. When I won actually a Venture Game of the Year when I made a horror game. It was called Sanitarium. And I think what was great about Sanitarium is that we didn't stick to one kind of horror or one type of mindset. Mm-hmm. We actually polled the whole group, the game team, and said, what are you afraid of? I'm scared of being alone. I'm scared of death. I'm scared of clowns. I'm scared of deformed things. I'm scared of, all these different things. And we made a horror salad. And so and everyone who played the game found something that they were like, ew, right? and so so at the end of the day, I think how artful you are at actually taking those things that that people fear and shaking them up or turning them sideways. Or it's great when it happens. And yeah, Chuck, I agree with you. I agree with most people that jump scares, because they're primal and easy, it's basically the gameplay version of potty humor, because it's just easy.
Yeah, it is. And so, I mean, that brings up a good point here, right? Because, for a horror, like if you're specific, depending on what kind of experience you're trying to create, you want to be able to make a game that can, obviously, like you said, resonate with your users, right? Either because, like you said, it's maybe playing on different fears, or it's playing on just giving them like an experience, new experience here. But you also need to still keep them engaged, right? So like I give an example of like when I was playing Dead Space. I did not finish Dead Space because I thought it was a great game. I was enjoying it, and I'm walking past what is the necromorph or xenomorph, whatever they're called, on the ground, right? And this one is laying there dead on the ground. And I passed by that guy like 3 or 4 times. I shot him a couple times. He didn't move or whatever. I'm like, good, he's dead. And then one time I passed by him and he jumped up. And I was like, I'm done with this game. I cannot, because the game, what it did for me was it played on my anxiety. That actually, I mean, it was a great game. It played on the thing that like really does bother me, but it never gave me a chance to have my anxiety come down. And when it did that, I was like, oh, I'm done. I can't play this game.
You know what the funny thing is? Yeah. That was the exact moment where I said, oh, I like this game. Because I was like, because they'd had some like irritating jump scares before, and most games that are like that will just like lean on jump scares. I don't do jump scares for movies or games. I'm just like, they're just, like I said, it's cheap. It's like it's icing. It's not, there's no depth to it, right? But for Dead Space,
the fondant.
It subverted my expectation, because I was like, okay, I've confirmed this guy is dead. Like he's dead. I've walked by him literally like 4 times, and then it like the jump scare was like at a moment where it's like, wait a second, all these things are dead. That's the entire purpose of this.
But still,
I do not. Like I said, horror games are not for everyone. That is by far. And in fact, I didn't used to play a lot of horror games. I still don't. I'm still okay with them. And even with horror movies, like I don't like. There's a certain class of horror movie that I don't enjoy, like the Saw movies and that kind of stuff. I don't enjoy like stuff where it's like the torture is just the purpose of the movie. That's not fun for me or anything like that. I enjoy stuff that often borrows from horror and integrates that into like a narrative or a storyline or something like that. And when you were talking about, like, one of the things I think was interesting, you were talking about related to a game's managing your anxiety. I think that's where I think it's a really narrow path to walk, because game designers do have to manage your anxiety. If they're not doing it and you're always up here all the time, that's where they churn out of the funnel. I think I went to a really great talk at GDC one year, and they were talking about how they designed the like they call it the director system for Left 4 Dead, right? And how they'd taken different cues and they did all this metrics and crunched all this data they'd gotten in, because they were trying to figure out why people stop playing these types of games. Because a lot of these types of games, people will just like, they play it a little bit and then they're just done. And they realize it's because if everyone's up here, if your anxiety's up here all the time, that's super stressful. Yep. And your brain might know, oh, it's stress that's caused by a game, so I'm not in danger. But your body doesn't necessarily know that. And ultimately, we are, combinations of chemicals and stuff, behaviors that function in your body. Is just like, listen, I'm done with it. It's the reason why I stopped playing Returnal. It was way too stressful for me. And they actually they created a system that managed it. If you remember for Left 4 Dead, it very much fell into sort of that horror space, or it borrowed a lot from horror. I don't know if I feel like it was a horror game, it was an action game with a lot of horror elements, but there were like lots of spaces you'd be in and there's just nobody there. And then sometimes there's just waves of guys who are coming at you. And every time after there was a wave or after there was a special, one of the special undead, whatever they're called, like you'd have like a period of just like calm. And they set your expectation to know when you were safe and when you weren't safe.
Yep.
And that was really smart because it kept people in that funnel for a really long time. And we played Left 4 Dead endlessly for quite some time. I think it might have been a console generation change before we actually stopped playing it.
I want to make a comment before I listen to Ryan, because I know he's got to drop some science on this. As a child, I was really afraid of the dark. And I was really afraid of the dark because, something that I could see perfectly when the lights were on, as soon as the lights were off and that darkness got augmented by my reality, by my imagination, everything went left, right? Like in a big way. So look, people, if you're designing things, trust me when I say less is more. Less is more, because people's imaginations give you so much more power than you can possibly imagine. All right. Just turn off the lights. I guarantee you that's scary. It's scary because that means different things to everyone. Some people will think spider. Some people will think clown. Some people will think snake. Some people will think all those different things. Use it. It's a very powerful tool.
And then you turn the lights on and the spider clown snake shows up.
Like, damn, I knew you were there, spider clown snake.
It's like when you're at the club and they turn the lights on and everyone, time to leave, time to go. Time to go.
There's no more mystery. Honestly, that's the analogy, is that the mystery is gone when the lights are on. Yep. And that's actually, just as an aside, like actually that's one of the reasons I kind of really enjoyed, like there's certain horror games that I feel are more action games but I enjoy horror games that are sort of I've seen a couple horror games that are actually in the daylight, and that's a hard thing to pull off.
Resident Evil. Actually, I will say, I'm not digging at Resident Evil. I actually really love the series and stuff like that. I like the fact that I can go around and things are just creepy. Like, I like the creepiness factor of it. I like that it's not necessarily trying to play on my anxiety and scare me or whatever. It's just trying to give me, here's a creepy experience or whatever. But I will say, this was the reason why. I mean, I have stopped playing some Resident Evil games before if they do play on my anxiety. So the ones that don't, I will get through and I will finish. The ones that do, they go up there next to Dead Space 1. So
Returnal, I think it definitely borrows a lot from the horror genre. Like, just the atmospheres that they have. Like, there's a whole subplot that is very much like trying to be a traditional sort of horror experience, where like you start having flashbacks or visions and stuff like that too, and then you realize you don't know who you are, and then you start finding other parts of yourself and stuff. So there's definitely horror elements to it as they're building out the narrative. There's that whole house that you find that's like, is this my house? It's my mother's house? Like, and like they intentionally play with like shadow and with shapes and stuff in those spaces.
No saving. No saving. And that's the horror. That's the horror
too. There's saving. It just doesn't save, what you want.
Is that horror? Or is that
every 45 minutes?
Is that horror, or is that horrible design?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So, got a question actually for you, Ryan. What do you think makes like a bad horror experience for you? Like when you're playing horror games?
A bad horror experience, man. I remember playing Resident Evil when it first came out. We all know we have a common friend named Sean, and Sean and I used to play that game. And we two grown men sitting in the living room, scared. we're like grabbing each other and jumping in the daylight. We're just freaking out playing that game when it first came out. I think it was a really good execution for that one game.
Yeah.
And especially growing up, because I grew up in the Caribbean, and the Caribbean has a very heavily voodoo atmosphere. There's a lot of people that believe in like witches and stuff like that. So I grew up hearing those stories and seeing things like that. Yeah. My parents used to tell me whenever we would hear noise on the roof, or you're like, oh, that's a witch. The witch is walking on the roof. So we used to freak out as kids, It's tell us stuff like that, man. And honestly,
Shut them up.
get them up and get them going.
Be quiet before that witch come down here and bust your tail.
Yeah.
So
They'll get you if you don't go to bed.
I know his mother. Yes.
yeah, it got to the point where I was so curious. I wanted to meet them. I wanted to go see these witches and stuff like that. They kept talking about. So I used to go out at nighttime and run around my house in the dark looking for these things. And I remember I used to go to this church, and when we were kids, and the church was built next to a graveyard. And at nighttime, we would have church, the evening church service. And all the parents used to hang out inside the church, and all the kids would go outside. After the church services was over, all the kids would go outside. And we used to dare each other to run out to go to this dark tree in the middle of nowhere. It's like in the middle of the graveyard. We used to run out there, touch the tree, and come back. So that helped me kind of train my brain to just kind of get away from being scared and stuff like that. Like stuff don't really spook me too much. Now I'm older.
Until Resident Evil.
I don't get scared at that. I hear stories and I'm like, okay, big deal.
Yeah.
He's scared of taxes.
I'm scared of taxes. I sure am.
I was going to say, by the way, Ryan, what you just described here would make a perfect backdrop for a game. I'm like,
actually,
there's witches on the ceiling making like noise and stuff like that. You're in the church that's next to the graveyard.
Run to the tree. Run to the dark tree over there. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, man. Yeah.
So, the last thing I want to ask, because I know we're getting close to time here. We have examples of Resident Evil is a good example of a horror series which relies, on third person kind of, third person characters, right? But you also have some horror games that are in first person. I'm just kind of curious what people's preference is for this. Obviously there's benefits and probably disadvantages for each, but I'm kind of curious what y'all think.
I by far prefer third person experiences for horror. And I'm not even talking about from a design experience, just that's just something I enjoy. It's like that too. I feel like it allows me to get, a lot of times a lot of games choose a first person point of view because they want you to feel like you're personally the avatar for it. I for some reason, a lot of the games I tend to gravitate to are not that space, actually. For first person, I usually prefer for shooters and that kind of stuff. But for the horror games and stuff and anything that's outside of that, first person actually, there's a disconnect for me personally. So I tend to gravitate towards the ones that give me a third person experience. I know Travis has got some deep thoughts about the first person and third person.
No, other than the fact that I think that first person games are usually more empowering because usually you're pointing a weapon as you're actually going through an environment, and so it's a feeling of empowerment, and in really that's an interesting area to play in. Because all you really have to do is take that weapon away from you, and now you're not so empowered after all. And there's plenty of camera tricks and things that you can do, oh, I know that you looked left, so I'm going to place this right behind you, right? That you can do in first person that you can't do in any other genre. So I think that first person buys you a little bit more in visceral, just. It's able to immerse you, I think, a little bit more. But the third person is still very powerful. So I don't have a preference really.
Yeah, one of the games that I know we didn't really get a chance to touch on it, but I'm just gonna throw it out here. A Plague's Tale, which I think I talked about some time ago. It's one of those games that definitely is, I think, one of your less conventional horror games in that your big bad, your enemies like that, is a persistent plague of rats that is a supernatural plague of rats that could just somewhat erupt from the ground in a literal wave sometimes and stuff as well. So I do like games that the horror genre. I think we oftentimes think of a very specific thing like ghosts and demons and monsters and stuff. And there's also, I love that games and movies have actually expanded that to utilize those sort of horror motifs in different ways. So go play a Plague's Tale. By the way, the sequel comes out on PS5 next year or something. So
try and get a PS5 if you can.
They're easy to get now, is what I heard.
Sure. Yeah. It's kind of like how if you already have money, it's easier to make money. So, if you already got a PS5, probably you can. But yeah, no, I agree with you on the Plague's Tale. I like how in that game it goes from progressively like, oh, there's just rats or whatever. Now there's waves. Now there's a tornado of rats. Like it's just like ridiculous stuff where you're like, okay.
The pillar of rats.
It's a pillar of
Falls over
rats.
on you.
Slam down on you. She has a little. So I think, by the way, I think what this discussion just tells us is we need to make the techn00bians horror video game. That's what we need to do.
Oh yeah, that'd
All
be cool.
these elements, and we'll smash it up, and it'd be fabulous. But anyways, this has been an awesome discussion from everybody. I love talking like this horror genre, and it's obviously very appropriate for tomorrow. But I do want to close up the show. I want to give a shout out to Digital Click for all the creative they give us for each and every show. If you want to learn more about techn00bians, hit us up at our website. That's techn00bians.com, techn00bians.com. Please feel free to follow us here on Twitch. And if you like our vibe,
and we know you boo.
And if you want to learn more about game development and everything geek, please consider subscribing to our channel. You can also follow us on all socials. We're on all major platforms. And if you're ever wondering what else geek we're talking about, check out our scheduled shows here on TGN on our Twitch page. Anyways, everyone, thank you so much. Have a happy Halloween, happy and safe Halloween. That's it for now. Thank you all for watching, and we will see you next week. Take care, everyone.